On Cambridge 105 Radio.
This radio programme, featuring the music of 1914, was broadcast in April 2020 and features guest co-host Liam Higgins. Right now, supporters on Patreon are listening to the show for 1925 or anything else from Centuries of Sound's archive, including full-length mixes for the years 1860 to 1945 and 2016 to 2019. Join them and help this project survive at patreon.com/centuriesofsound. Hello and welcome to Centuries of Sound, the show where we use archive audio to take a deep dive into the ancient history of recorded sound. My name is James Errington. I run the Centuries of Sound website, where I'm making a soundscape-style mix for every year. And today I'm joined by...
Liam Higgins.
Of this show and no other show at the moment.
Currently no other show at the moment, but we're always asking.
So if you'd like to hire Liam for your show, contact us via the usual address, centuriesofsoundmail@gmail.com. We've just heard Pale K Lua, The Rosary. That was where would you imagine that's from?
Southern United States?
Well, that's from Hawaii.
Okay.
Which I guess is technically the Southern United States.
No, that's kind of, mid, very, very western.
It's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, but it's definitely to the west of the United States.
The Hawaiian influence on American music is one of those things that people don't really appreciate quite so much, but the steel guitar in country music and some elements of jazz, it kind of comes from this Hawaiian craze of the 1910s, which we hear a little bit of every week, but a very pleasant way to begin our mix. So this year we've gone back to the year 1914, which is a year that many people will know.
Because of its impending doom.
I don't know if the doom is impending or if it's already arrived.
Well, it was impending at the time.
Yeah, it was impending at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year...
And no one realised. It was one of those things where they thought that it could not happen. And it's a warning from history. That people said, we're all too interconnected. It could not happen. But it did.
And people say similar things these days. So
exactly. So it's a warning from history.
All right. So 1914. What was it like to be alive in 1914?
I think probably in 1914 it felt really, really good. Like, you're at the height of the British Empire. everything seems to be going really well. There are some ominous noises coming from Germany, but you think it's all going to be fine.
Yeah,
it's all fine, and no one can ever have a war because we're all too economically interconnected.
So in researching this, I listened to a lot of BBC, mostly BBC things about the First World War, and especially the beginning. They seem to invest a lot of money in the beginning of the war, and it's an amazing thing to listen to the beginning of the First World War and how it all took place, because I mean, every moment listening to it, no matter how many different versions of it you listen to, you always think, yeah, they're not going to go to war. It's just ridiculous. There's no reason that they're going to go to war. Somebody's going to see that this is a silly idea. And no, it always happens the same way, obviously, because that's how history works. But
sure.
It is a ridiculous. I don't know. I'd like to quiz you. What do you know about the start of the First World War? How did it all begin?
So it starts with the assassination in Sarajevo.
I think we can take it a bit further back than that.
I mean, you've got military build-up in both with the Germans in terms of naval build-up and the British matching them. And you've got the Triple Entente making alliances. You've got the Germans making alliances with the Austrians, and it's this idea essentially of creating defensive alliances because you think that will prevent war.
And the assassination, the Archduke
Franz Ferdinand
of Franz Ferdinand,
and poor Franz Ferdinand, he was one of the most liberal leaders of Austria-Hungary at the time. He was the one arguing much more for peace than for war.
But that's the ideal person to assassinate if you want to war.
Well, it's the one that's going to be the most exposed because he's exposing himself to you.
Not literally.
Yeah, not generously.
Good. So his assassination is a kind of bizarre story as well. He decided to go to Sarajevo to celebrate their taking over of Sarajevo at a time that was not ideal. It was an important day for the Serbs in Bosnia. So it was a bit of a silly thing to do in the first place to arrive there on that day. But as far as the assassination went, so do you know the name of his assassin?
Anton Gustav.
It's a Gavrilo Princip.
Damn it.
Is his name. Yeah.
My history teacher who lives in Cambridge will be very angry right now.
If they're listening, that's
right.
Gavrilo Princip. He went with what were the gang called?
Black Hand Gang.
The Black Hand Gang, which is the best name for a gang to start all the troubles of the 20th century. Well done in the naming committee there. They went there. They brought some guns and they fired on his what do you call it? His parade. And,
no, I mean it would more like cavalcade. What?
A cavalcade. It doesn't sound that festive.
That's not right. That's right.
So they fired on his train of carriages, and they killed and wounded a few people. And what did the prince? What did the Archduke Franz Ferdinand do at that moment?
He decided he should carry on.
Yeah.
And they should go. And I mean, it's more complicated than that. Like, as I understand it, they were going to change route, but then they changed back to the normal route.
Well, he went to visit some of the wounded in hospital, and then he decided, to go back to his accommodation. I think wherever that was, and the driver decided to take a shortcut, and that
took them back onto the original route that they were going to be on.
Well, it took him down a side road, and it happened that on that side road, Gavrilo Princip was in a cafe on that side road. And he said, "Oh, that's the Archduke," and he jumped out and shot him and his wife. And then the 20th century happened. Yeah, cheers, Gavrilo Princip, who died.
Starting the 20th century 14 years too late.
Yeah, I mean he died. Was it of tuberculosis? Anyway, he died in 1917 in a prison. He was not executed for that. But yeah, from that and the belligerence and intransigence of the Austrians, and the keenness to go to war of the Germans, and the not backing downness of the Russians, and the insistence of the Germans of going through Belgium, and the insistence of the British public of protesting about that until they went to war. Then we got the First World War. So cheers, well done, guys. Excellent job there.
And you know how it sounds complicated there? It was definitely a lot more complicated.
Oh,
than that.
yeah. There's a TV series. Is it called 100 and... It's called 49 Days. That's the one. Have you seen that? That's quite good.
No, I have not.
That's about the going to war from the British diplomatic side.
Right now.
No, there's loads of good things I watched and listened to when I was researching this originally. But yeah, it's a bad business, the war. We've got some songs about it, sort of. Songs that were popular as the soldiers marched off to war. First of all, it was the British Expeditionary Force in 1914, and then they had conscription a little later in the year. And as they marched off, they listened to, first of all, a song called It's a Long Way to Tipperary, which was not written as a war song. It was just a popular song of the day.
And it goes like?
And it goes like this. We're going to hear three versions of this, and they are not... I think one of them is possibly from the UK, but two of them are definitely not. First is by Billy Murray and the American Quartet. Second by Stanley Kirby. That might be from the UK. Then we have Prince's Orchestra, which is the first and the third are definitely recorded in New York, as the recording industry basically was in this year. So let's have a listen to this song and then see how we feel about it.
Up to mighty London came an Irishman one day. As the streets are paved with gold, sure everyone was gay, singing songs of Piccadilly, Strand and Leicester Square, till Paddy got excited, then he shouted to them there. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know in Tipperary. So it's goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Paddy wrote a letter to his Irish Molly, saying, should you not receive it, write and let me know. If I make mistakes in spelling, Molly dear, said he, remember it's the pen that's bad, don't lay the blame on me. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. To the
So that was 3 different versions of It's a Long Way to Tipperary, the one of the smash hits of the year 1914. So are you impressed by any of those versions?
I mean, I particularly like the original version because that is the one that reminds me of my kind of auditory vision of how the First World War is and started. Like, when I was a small child, like, that was a song that my dad sang to me. Like...
Yeah, we sang it in the car. It's a long way to Liverpool.
It's a long way to go. So, for me anyway, it's quite a sort of, it's a significant song in the history of the British Isles.
Yeah.
And particularly of the British Empire and nation.
I should say the better First World War songs really come along in 1918. But
it's finished.
We will hear another.
Almost finished.
When the Americans get involved, they
but
start
I mean,
making
it's
songs,
almost finished.
Okay, let's hear something else along the same lines. This is another famous song of the First World War, but one that hasn't survived quite so well. It's called Sister Susie's Sewing Shirts for Soldiers.
Sister Susie sewing in the kitchen on a singer. There's miles and miles of flannel on the floor and up the stairs. And Father says it's rotten, getting mixed up with the cotton and sitting on the needles that she leaves upon the chairs. And should you knock at our street door, Ma whispers, "Come inside." Then when you ask where Susie is, she says with loving pride, "Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers." Such skill at sewing shirts our shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the saucy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie sews. I forgot to tell you that our Sister Susie's married, and when she isn't sewing shirts, she's sewing other things. Then little Sister Molly says, "Oh, Sister's bought a dolly. She's making all the clothes for it with pretty bows and strings." Says Susie, "Don't be silly," as she blushes and she sighs. Then Mother smiles and whispers with a twinkle in her eyes, "Sister Susie sewing shirts for soldiers." Such skill at sewing shirts our shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the saucy soft short shirts for soldiers Sister Susie sews. Ah, well, I'm glad that's off my chest. Now I'd like to have everybody join in the chorus. It isn't as hard as it sounds, not nearly as difficult as Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or She Sells Seashells by the seashore. But you must be sober before you try it. Come now, all together.
Sister Susie's sewing shirts for soldiers. Such skill at sewing shirts our shy young Sister Susie shows. Some soldiers send epistles, say they'd sooner sleep in thistles than the saucy soft short shirts that soldiers Sister Susie shows. Woo!
Well done. All right, so that's the second of our World War I songs. That's not so well remembered these days.
Can we have the additional choruses?
No, that's not even in the song.
Cecily's is shelling shrimps for soldiers.
Sailors.
Hang on. Okay, one more time.
Cecily sits shelling shrimps for sailors. At sedentary shrimp shelling, sweet Cecily excels. Some sailors send dispatches citing shoddy shrimp she catches. For the salty, sour, shriveled shrimp, sweet Cecily unshells.
Hang on. So, Pippa puts pink piping on for pilots.
Pip pinks pink piping pots on purple Polish pilots' pants. But prissy Polish pilots hide their pretty pink in public and prefer pale pilot pantaloons to Pippa's pink pipe pants. So that was Sister Susie's Sewing Shirts for Soldiers, joined in at the end here by Mr. Liam Higgins.
At the end?
At the end, yeah.
At the end.
Was for the second chorus, as encouraged by Mr. Billy Murray.
My cruel editor over here.
Billy Murray was the major singing star of his day and an American. And he is performing this piece in a kind of musical / vaudeville manner. What's the World War I connection? It was a hit that mentioned soldiers. Therefore,
that's all you need to make a million whilst the war is on.
Indeed. We're going to hear one other song briefly about the First World War. This one's from the UK, unusually in this case, because the record industry wasn't doing too well over here. And this one's called Belgium Put the Kibosh on the Kaiser.
Good evening, people. The game. And the Kaiser full of sausage, French Napoleon it be. Then Winston broke his promise, it was made in Germany. He shook hands with Britannia, and eternal peace he swore. The naughty boy, he spoke at peace while he prepared for war. He stirred a little Servian, the service dirty trick. But dirty nights at Liège quite upset this dirty dick. His luggage labelled England, his program nicely set. He shouted first up Paris, but he hasn't got there yet. It was Belgium put the kibosh on the Kaiser. Europe dropped the cane and made him sore. And on his throne it hurts to sit. And when John Bull starts to hit, he may never sit upon it anymore. It was Belgium put the kibosh on the Kaiser. Europe dropped the cane and made him sore. And now he's lamed it in the woods. We won't buy his German goods, and we'll never taste his lager anymore. Stick to the British whiskey you're used to. The great fellow, the Kaiser, he and his German culture. He wait till he gets a little bit of British physical culture. That'll do him now. What about General von Kluck? He's no chicken. He'll never cluck again. The French have broken his right wing. I was speaking to an Irish friend of mine the other day, one of the Dublin Fusiliers, over home here, just with a shot through the arm. He said, I'll be back again in a fortnight, Jonathan. I said, well, how are you getting on with the Germans? Says he, they're like a lot of rabbits in a warren. They're digs if you can't find them. But one of our young lieutenants, a humorous friend of mine, got them out the other day. He walked right up to the German French and he shouted, waiter! And there were 208 stopped up and we shot a lot of them. Now, gentlemen, as you were. The Kaiser ought to go to school and learn his geography. He quite forgot our colonies and our hands across the sea. He'll find we hold 4 acres that will beat his game at nap. Why, he didn't notice England, just a smaller from the map. While Patsy's argumentative, said the Kaiser, I'll be John. He didn't know the Irish, though he may do later on. And though the Kaiser made the war, excuse him for the crime, his lunatic attendants were not with him at the time. Belgium put the kibosh on the Kaiser. Europe dropped the cane and made him sore. And will soon shout out with joy, hold your hand out, naughty boy. You must never play at soldiers anymore. Belgium put the kibosh on the Kaiser. Europe dropped the cane and made him sore. And we'll make the German band play the tune we understand. Rule Britannia rules the waves forevermore. That's the British one.
So that was Belgium Put the Kibosh on the Kaiser, performed there by Mr. Jack Sheridan. What did you make
On
of
a
that?
point, well, I mean,
Have you drunk any German beer since the First World War?
I have. So
You
I'd
have?
say that I want to impugn his honesty at that point.
Yeah, I mean, this is 1914, so I'm afraid he's getting a bit ahead of himself in imagining that the Kaiser is finished in 1914.
I mean, he is wrong in the sense that the beer quality beer is going to lower in the UK, and people are going to start drinking Pilsner and bad beer.
He
to be honest,
didn't
for a
anticipate
lot of-
Foster's.
Yeah, exactly. Or Stella Artois.
No.
Okay.
Well.
Can I sing it?
No. Okay, there we go.
Belgium put the kibosh on the Kaiser, and Europe took a stick and made him store. On his throne it hurts to sit, and when John Bull starts to hit, he will never sit upon it anymore. He'll be banished to the woods, and we'll bar his German goods, and we'll never drink his lager anymore. Except we will.
I just imagine the Kaiser sitting there going, I don't care if you're importing German lager, we're going to take over Europe.
As he drinks English gin.
As he drinks English gin. Did he drink English gin? What were the drinking habits of the Kaiser?
He's probably like his great grand niece or something.
Great grand niece. Who would that be?
Our queen.
Our queen. Does she
They're all
like a
fucking
Does she like a pint
They're all related.
of gin?
She loves a pint of gin.
A pint of gin.
Just on its own.
Wow.
No tonic.
That's what did Princess Margaret drink? She drank gin with this mixer that's
Gin
this weird
and
stuff.
the blood of plebs.
Okay. Well, runs like water in the palace, obviously. So yeah. That's the First World War. There's nasty business all around. I was thoroughly against it. Enough of the war songs for now. The First World War is continuing on to Christmas. We have the famous Christmas truce, which was in various parts of the trenches. Yeah. And then we have the football game in the Christmas truce, which may have happened, which may have not happened, or may have happened in places.
But I think, for me anyway, it's significant in the sense that men and normal people connect, whereas they are forced by their masters to be enemies, rather than be connected around shared interests like football.
Yeah, the dehumanising that went on.
And there were orders after the Christmas truce, which were saying you must not allow this to happen ever again, because this might endanger the war effort on both sides. And
I believe some of them, it was the Bavarians they were fighting against, and they got on very well with the Bavarians. And then they moved the Bavarians to other places because the Bavarians and the English refused to fight each other at that point.
On Cambridge 105 Radio.
So what's going on in the world of music? When we last had Liam on, we were on the early days of the 20th century, where we had kind of little bits of more peacocky ragtime going on. But otherwise we were
The main thing I remember is the last recording of a eunuch.
We listened to the last recording of a eunuch. There's no eunuchs in this mix.
That we know of.
As far as I'm aware. What kind of music do we have in 1914? We do not have jazz as yet, I'm afraid. What we do have is the thing that kind of came between ragtime and jazz, which was kind of a dead end, but it's an interesting dead end, I'd say, and something that's kind of disappeared from popular memory. I've never heard people talk about it till I started researching for this.
What's the sort of official name for it then?
I will call it hot dance ragtime. It doesn't really have an official name.
Hot dance ragtime.
The main proponent of hot dance ragtime is a guy.
Hot dance ragtime.
Is a guy called Jim Reese Europe. Let's have a look what Jim Reese Europe looks like.
He's got some fairly hipster glasses.
Yeah, Jim Reese Europe.
It's the kind of glasses that will come back around after 100 years.
Jim Reese Europe was important because he brought the first proper kind of black orchestra to prominence. He was performing in New York with a married couple called the Castles, and they were introducing dances like the foxtrot to the world of society while his all-black orchestra were playing. And it was revolutionary for the day. Kind of amazing that it existed at all.
Because it might not have been allowed by the authorities.
Yeah, before this, the idea that you'd have like an all-black orchestra, but the Castles insisted that they play, and they played at Carnegie Hall and other places like that. And what did they play? They played ragtime music, essentially. But instead of playing ragtime as you might remember it, with the piano, with Scott Joplin kind of rags and things like that, they played it for dancing, for like crazy wild dancing. It's not, as you will hear, it is not jazz. You'll hear what's the difference between this and jazz, because it lacks the kind of blue notes, and it lacks the horns. I think is the main thing. You kind of think of jazz as with like trumpets and cornets. It kind of lacks that as well. So how can you make something that's almost jazz without horns and without that kind of blue note kind of sound as well, without that kind of swerve to the notes? Let's have a listen what it sounds like.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because it is kind of astounding. Okay, so that was Europe's Society Orchestra with Castle House Rag and Castle Walk, a medley of those two. What did you make of James Reese Europe? It's an odd thing, but
quite high, like in terms of like the notes, it's quite high.
Yeah, I guess I think with jazz, you're thinking of those kind of early groups, but he's going in the complete with like a small group or with kind of horns at the same time, maybe one drummer, but he's going a completely different direction with like lots of drums and lots of like strummed instruments like banjos, which is a really different sound, and it's very hard to capture. I think it doesn't really come across well in a recording as well.
I think that's probably it. It's just not captured within the recording media.
And you've got to imagine he's got an orchestra of like 50 or so people, whereas in the recording studio he's got 10 or so.
That kind of number of people you expect to be quite a big sound, but it's not really.
It's impossible to capture that, unfortunately, yeah. But still, you can kind of get a feeling if he's going in a different direction there. He's managing to kind of make a new sound, but it will be dead within a couple of years. When jazz really breaks out, and there is jazz going on at this point, but nobody's recording it because nobody thinks of going down to New Orleans to record music. It just doesn't seem to occur to anybody until quite a few years later. Let's have a listen to some more like dance ragtime music to get a feeling of where it is right now, because this is the hot genre of the year. Even as war breaks out in Europe, America is not involved, so they're still having kind of a party. Let's have a listen to Eugene Jowdas's National Promenade Band. It's one of these artists where he's kind of he was really big in these years, but the tide of jazz just swept him away. Major recording artist who doesn't seem to have much recorded about him now, and nobody interested in writing something really, it seems. But this is called Meadowbrook Rag. Okay, so that was Eugene Jaldis's National Promenade Band with Meadowbrook Rag. What kind of sound would you describe that as?
It's woodpecker with having a little bit of fun with himself. I don't really get that. Like, it's the dominant sound to me. I guess the one that seems so alien to me is the one which sounds like it might have been from one of those noisemakers from a football ground of that era. You know, the clicky wooden clicker.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think the deal with this is that it's I don't know, a novelty music, I'd say, but novelty music wasn't like ghettoized at this point. It was kind of when you hear the really early jazz, it's got a kind of element of that, of like we are crazy out of control guys, and we could make any different sounds. You'll never believe what sounds we're making next. Okay. And it's that kind of tradition that they're drawing on there. Let's have a listen to something a little similar. This is the Six Brown Brothers, who recently became the Six Brown Brothers. They were previously the Five Brown Brothers. Another brother joined them. These guys, they survived through this time into the jazz era, just about, and became a early jazz act. But they're a vaudeville troupe dressing as clowns, playing trumpets. That's their deal.
All right.
So let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, so that was the Six Brown Brothers with that moaning saxophone rag.
That kind of music, it kind of makes my skin crawl.
Really? Okay.
Like it really is that kind of weird to me.
Okay, they would make sort of jazz music a few years after this. They kind of like transitioned into that. So
it's the kind of music you expect in a really uncomfortable fair. Like,
yeah,
you know, you're watching the film and that kind of music is on, and you're like, something bad is gonna happen. That's the vibe.
Okay.
They performed as clowns with white makeup and one in blackface.
Yes.
Were they white men?
They were white men, of course.
Okay, well, of course.
Okay. Yeah, they perform many different songs, and we might hear from them again in the future. Should we have one more ragtimey kind of band? Yeah, let's have just one more briefly. This is the National Promenade Band with Lulu. Okay, that was the National Promenade Band with Lulu.
I dislike that less.
Okay, I'm glad you say a bit less. So why do you dislike that one less?
A little bit more like a more fun rhythm, I'd say.
Okay. Can you hear the link between these songs though? They've got this kind of like novelty ragtime sound.
Yeah, and you've still got that very clicky kind of maraca or something.
Castanets and a xylophone.
That's what it is, yeah.
They're entertainers trying to entertain everyone. I can kind of get that. So that's where bands are at this point.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of bands, I would describe them as kind of military or ragtime bands a bit before this, and I'll be describing them as jazz bands a bit later.
On Cambridge 105 Radio.
Where should we go next? Let's have a listen to what's going on in the UK, shall we?
All right.
This is a guy who you might have heard of. He's called George Formby. Have you heard of George Formby?
Heard of a grill?
Not the George Formby grill.
Yes, okay. George Formby was very famous for doing banjo things, right?
Ukulele he had rather
Ukulele.
than banjo.
Okay.
This isn't that George Formby. This is his dad. This is George Formby Senior rather than George Formby Junior. George Formby Senior was called the Wigan Nightingale. Because he made a coughing noise because he had tuberculosis. He wasn't around much longer than this, but he was a very major star in these days. His stage persona was a big influence on Charlie Chaplin. So he's very important kind of culturally at this point. This is his parody of Alexander's ragtime band. It's called John Willie's Ragtime Band.
I'm a full band now. Talk about your ragtime brass bands, your cigar bands, and your rap bands. We've got a band that holds the sway. It's a band down our way. Talk about your ragtime trombones, and your wishbones, and your fishbones. When you've all done playing, you can hold your breath. We've got all the other fellas skinned to death, 'cause I've skinned them all myself. Oh, oh, John Willie's ragtime band. Oh, oh, John Willie's ragtime band. Hear us when we play on Wigan Pier. Mill girls flock around and give a cheer, and the colliers all shout by gum, ear, ear, itchy-coo, itchy-coo, itchy-coo. We dress just like the horse guards blue. We've won gold cups and saucers too. In Bury, now they do it grand. They hop round with black puddings in the rand. When they hear John Willie's ragtime band, baby dear, listen here, zim. Oh, oh, John Willie's ragtime band. When we play, all the people faint away. Oh, oh, John Willie's ragtime band. What a mob when we're out upon the job. Hear us when we play on Wigan Pier. Mill girls flock around and give a cheer, and the colliers all shout by gum, here, here, mine's a beer, mine's a beer, mine's a beer. We dress just like the horse guards, blue swagger togs and a pair of novice clogs. We've won gold cups and saucers too, no mistake. We're the lads to take the cake in Bolton. Now they know a lot with the cow wheel in the run. They can do the turkey trot when they hear John Willie's ragtime band.
So that was George Formby Senior with John Willie's Ragtime Band. Sounds from England. Yeah, we don't have many recordings from the UK, but you can get a feeling of what people listen to around here at that point. You said that you recognise that from history.
Yeah, I mean, those are very historic songs that I think were probably quite familiar in like the 1950s as well.
Because Alexander's Ragtime Band was a big hit of a couple of years before that.
Sure.
Yeah.
His son, the sound of what his son produced is quite similar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's an imitation of him more than anything else. Let's have a listen to some novelty songs from America now. This is a ridiculous one by Ada Jones. Technically English is Ada Jones, although she moved to America at a young age. This is her singing something called Pussycat Rag.
I've got an old maid sister, she's crazy over cats. She wears her hair just pasted down, for she's afraid of rats. She's got the neighbors talking, and they don't think she's right, for you can hear her calling cats at any time of night.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Here, Puss. Come, Puss. Just a little bit. That's enough of it. Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow. That's a pussycat rag. Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Here, Puss. Come, Puss. Just a little bit. That's enough of it. Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow. That's a pussycat rag.
Right underneath my window at 12 o'clock at night, they either serenade the moon or else they'll start a fight. Out comes my old maid sister and calls each one by name. Someday she'll lose her pussycat if she keeps up that game.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Here, Puss. Come, Puss. Just a little bit. That's enough of it. Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow. That's a pussycat rag.
Listen, my goodness, sister, what is that hideous noise?
Why, that's Tiny, my beautiful little Maltese cat.
Well, you'd better call Tiny into the house, or I can see her finish. Here comes a coon with a big bulldog.
Here, Tiny.
Lay down there. What's the matter with you, boy? Huh?
Oh, say, you horrid man. Why don't you call your dog away?
I can't hold that dog, lady. There can't nobody hold that dog. The minute you see a cat, simply impossible. Ain't it, Jerry?
Well, if you don't go away, I'll call a policeman.
Say, lady, the cops won't go near that dog. Besides, I can't hold him no longer nohow.
All right, then. Let the dog go. But you'll wish you hadn't. You'll be sorry I gave you fair warning.
You gave me warning, eh? You say that I'll be sorry? Go on, Jerry. Go for that old Molly Bruiser and eat her up. Take her.
Go for him, Tiny. Give it to him. Give it to him, Tiny. Go for him. Right, give it to him. Give it to him, Tiny. Give it to him.
For goodness sake. Say, lady, what kind of a cat did you say that was?
Why, she's nothing but a little tame house cat.
Lady, that ain't no tame cat. That cat done made my bulldog look like a monkey. That's a wild cat. Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty.
Here, Puss. Come, Puss. Just a little bit. That's enough of it.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow. That's a pussycat rag.
It's just, I find it so difficult to watch. Listen to sounds like this, because it just makes me think that people at the time had a very different understanding of what things sound nice, because that is a hideous pitch.
That is a hideous pitch. I mean, Ada Jones is a funny thing, because she's the biggest recording artist of this era, the female recording artist. But she does this kind of reedy old lady voice in all her songs.
It's really, really awful.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, it's not one of my favourites, but I think it's entertaining. I can understand people. You know, you think about how people listen to music through the ages, and at this point, you've got a gramophone and you've got some friends around. It's like, hey, I've got a gramophone. Let's put on a novelty record. We can listen to it. That's as we can all sit around and listen and laugh. That's how people consume music at this point, really. So that's how it worked. Okay, one more novelty song before we done with novelty songs. I feel like we've got too many of them.
Love this.
Yeah, this is going to be your favourite, I'm sure. This one is possibly even racist, so
good.
I'm not sure if it is, but I think it's kind of good as well.
Good
Unfortunately, those
racism.
two things are not always separable. Yeah, I really wish they were. So this is Billy Murray. Not Bill Murray, it's Billy Murray with Ragtime Temple Bells.
On a great big Yankee man of war was a great big Yankee blackjack tar on the coast of China. One fine day cut his sticks and ran away. Got a job the very first day ashore in a heathen temple as janitor. His boss was a Jaws, his shipmate held, who sent him to ring the temple bells. And every time he rang the chime, he'd shudder and he'd wince. So he turned the bells in ragtime. They've been that way ever since. Boom, boom, bingity-bing in the morning sun. Boom, boom, bungity-bung when the day is done. Nothing could be sweeter than the syncopated meter of those sweet bells. Boom, boom, bingity-bing when the day is fair. Boom, boom, bungity-bung, all the town is there. Every chinko just as dippy as a coon from Mississippi. Oh, ring them bells, don't you hear them chiming? Lovey-dovey rhyming. Jingle, jangling, tango, tangling, tangling, tangling. Boom, boom, bingity-bing in the morning sun. Boom, boom, bungity-bung when the day is done. Ragtime, ragtime, ragtime temple bells. When a Chinese boy in old Pekin goes to purify himself from sin, he walks along with step demure, very good boy to be sure. When the bells ring out that heathen knave just can't make his feet behave. His sandals grow so queer and hot, they start him to do the turkey trot. So every Sunday school parade along the Pekin way looks something like a picture of a New York cabaret. Boom, boom, bingity-bing in the morning sun. Boom, boom, bungity-bung when the day is done. Nothing could be sweeter than the syncopated meter of those sweet bells. Boom, boom, bingity-bing when the day is fair. Boom, boom, bungity-bung, all the town is there. Every chinko just as dippy as a coon from Mississippi. Oh, ring them bells, don't you hear them chiming? Lovey-dovey rhyming. Jingle, jangling, tango, tangling, tangling, tangling. Boom, boom, bingity-bing in the morning sun. Boom, boom, bungity-bung when the day is done. Ragtime, ragtime, ragtime temple bells.
So that was Billy Murray with Ragtime Temple Bells, a shameless cash-in of the ragtime craze, with a fair dash of racism thrown in there as well.
Yep.
Unavoidably so. So yeah, but it's catchy.
Yeah, I find that more enjoyable, even in spite of the racism.
Yeah, the boom bing biggity bang.
That was good.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
I like that.
Lulu would use many years later at Eurovision. All right, let's go to the Caucasus. It's a difficult area throughout the next few years because of various
The voting part.
terrible historical events. The voting? Oh no, not
the voting Caucasus.
Not the voting Caucasus in America.
I mean, that was a mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess in Iowa. But...
this is the Folk and Liturgical Choir of Tbilisi.
As in, you're talking about the Caucasus and Caucasian?
Yes. So that bit between Turkey and Russia. Mm-hmm. So this is a recording session in Georgia around this time. In 1914, one of the ethnographic pioneers went to Tbilisi to record different kind of choirs from the area, and some of the things he came back with kind of astonishing. Just kind of makes you wish we had a full range of recordings from all around the world at this point. But it's going to be a few years before we have anything resembling that.
Right.
So yeah, this is the Folk and Liturgical Choir of Tbilisi with Chona, I believe it's pronounced. All right, so that was the Folk and Liturgical Choir of Tbilisi with Chona. What did you make of that?
I like that. Like I like the harmonising, the very deep harmonising of that. That is, it does feel like you're falling into some kind of very, very different world.
Yeah, I wonder how many amazing things we could have recorded at that time if there had been a chance. Yeah, what was lost to there's a Marconi had an idea that we could build a device that would be able to spin back sound waves, so we could hear history. We could hear Beethoven performing, or we could hear Julius Caesar's last words or something.
That sounds fairly physically impossible, but it doesn't work. It's a beautiful dream.
That's an idea. But I do wonder this. I think we don't really have a good audio record of the world until the 30s, really.
Yeah.
And even then, maybe not so much.
Only what people were paying attention to.
Yeah. But yeah, beautiful stuff from Tbilisi there. Georgia winning the prize for Best Music of 1914 easily, I think.
On Cambridge 105 Radio.
That's all we have for you today from Centuries of Sound. I've been James Errington, and if you enjoy what you've heard here today and want to hear a bit more music and a bit less me talking, then you can come along to my website, which is centuriesofsound.com, a place where I make mixes, like soundscape style mixes, for every year starting in 1853 all the way through to the present. And so far I've reached the year 1923. So lots of great stuff to come in the future. If you want to get in touch, if you've got any corrections for us or anything else, I'm James at centuriesofsound.com. You can find me on Twitter or Facebook. And Liam,
yep.
If people are interested in listening to you talk some more, whereabouts can they go about doing that? I think they should just follow you in real life, probably.
Probably just follow me in real life.
Yeah.
With a microphone.
Yeah. Demand he speak to you.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, James.
So what do you make of 1914? Is it a progression from 1902? I think it was last time.
It's definitely better than 1902, I would say.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that's just really tells you something about my own kind of perception of music. Really, that obviously things that are closer to me in musical time are going to be more acceptable to me in terms of musical taste.
What's the time the oldest music you would listen to generally?
I'd probably maybe 1930s blues, but even then it's pushing it.
What kind of things from 30s blues?
Delta, but like again, I wouldn't be able to specifically pinpoint like that was 1930s as opposed to 1940s or 50s. Like,
No, okay.
Yeah,
fair enough.
The earliest thing I'm certain that's something I really really like is someone like Fats Domino, and that's I think quite a lot later.
That is, I think, 50s even.
Yeah.
I'd say for him. There's loads of good stuff from 30s, from late 20s especially. All right. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to play out with somebody called Kitty Burger. Kitty Burger. When I read this out loud, it sounds kind of funny. So, yeah. Don't eat kitty burgers. That's horrible.
That's it. Yeah,
Burger is a respectable German family name. Kitty is a respectable German female name. So nothing wrong with that. This is Kitty Burger, an instrumental. It's called Romance from Leclerc.